Oh, right. I am back here working on a snapper again, and I'm looking up the poor old girl's skirt. And the reason being is this wheel right here is worn to crap. This is the drive wheel that gets driven by the pulley on the bottom of the engine, which when you move the shifter out of neutral, which it's in now, it basically just jams the wheel up against this when you let the clutch out. So over time the wheel gets super wore out, which it is. There's almost no rubber left on that, especially considering the new one I got, you know, the meat pretty much comes out to here on her, which I'll show you when I figure out how to remove this wheel. So that's why I'm looking up the poor old girl's skirt, is to figure out how to remove the driven hub, as I call it. There's a couple nuts over here. There's a big one in the middle and a few small ones, so I gotta start taking it apart and change that wheel. Alright, so it was actually easier than I suspected. I only had to remove the smaller outside nuts. I didn't have to remove the big one in the middle. So this is the old one, as you can see, super flat and worn out. This one is all nice and new and bulbous looking. You can see, you know, roughly how much they're wore out. You know, I don't know how that looks on camera, but there's a pretty big difference, and it's enough to make it work and not work. Anyways, so there's a fibrous brake shoe type thing that gets pressed into the center. This one has one too. It's kind of wore out, so I just had to squish that in place. There's the seam for it. If you're wondering, this goes on top like that somehow, and then this goes out on the outside like that. So now I'm just gonna put her back together and see how she goes. Also, if you're wondering, that's what it looks like up under the skirt there. That shiny drum thing would be the brake drum, and there's apparently some sort of spring clutch in there or something. I'm not sure exactly, but that's, you know, how this bitch works, so to say. And it's back on there. It was actually pretty simple. I didn't really have to think too much even. There's probably a torque spec on these little nuts here. I don't know what it is. I gave it a couple grunts with a 3/8 ratchet. It's probably close enough, I imagine. One more thing I do have to do to this poor beast is I have to put some Loctite on the screws to hold the carb on. Unfortunately, the other day when I was using it, the little screws that hold on the carburetor loosened up and it started to flop around. And I need to change the exhaust gasket that's got a nice rip in it. I have a new gasket and I have some Loctite for this, so I'm just going to give the beast a test and then take care of those other odds and ends, and hopefully just be able to mow grass with it, to be honest with you. So this here is the exhaust gasket. It goes on there, which goes there. You can see it clearly was blowing exhaust fumes up the top. There's a little bit going down this way, so it was definitely in need of being changed, and I had known that it fell apart when I was taking this stuff apart the last time. So I went on eBay and found somebody selling a bunch of them, so I bought a couple. That goes on there like that, or something. Anyways, I have Loctited up these screws here because they did come loose. It definitely burns a little bit of oil. Like after you use it for mowing the grass and let it sit for a bit, it, you know, the next time you start it, it puffs a decent amount of blue smoke, so it's burning a little bit of oil and it's getting up into the carburetor when it sits, and it puffs it out all at once. And it probably burns a bit while it's running. So, you know, I don't know how much life this engine will have as is. You know, at some point it might break down and I'll have to hone it and do new piston and rings and whatnot. But for now, she still runs and mows grass, so I really can't complain.